Hello everyone, I just wanted to offer some more insight into the Defy Media situation from the perspective that I've experienced it from. The reason I'm doing this, I did a few tweets about this. Oh sorry, my phone just went off. This is just going to be very rambly and just me kind of going through everything that happened. Apologies if it's not super interesting, but a lot of people have asked about it and I thought, hey, why not just do this as opposed to doing a series of 1,000 tweets. So basically, Defy Media, they shut down earlier this week. Initially, it was just going to be the LA office, it seemed, but no, it's extended company-wide. And if you don't know who Defy Media are, they are a digital media company. They own Smosh, Smosh Games, Clever, a bunch of other properties that you may be familiar with or may not be familiar with. And they have something like 75 regular scheduled shows out across various media platforms, but mostly the likes of YouTube. Also, you might know them as the previous owners of Screen Junkies, so they sold off a few months back, which does tie into this whole situation, which I'll come back to in a bit. So basically they own those, but they're also a YouTube network. And how a YouTube network works is that as a YouTube channel, you sign up and then they collect your ad revenue, take a cut, and then pass it on to you. And you might think, why would anybody want to do something like that? Well, the reason I did initially, I've been with a couple of full screen initially and then moved over to Defy, was because I kept getting a bunch of copyright strikes. My original YouTube channel got taken down and was never returned. I couldn't get anybody in YouTube to respond. So basically they're the in-between to make sure that that doesn't happen. And generally they can help a little bit more than you can individually, though not always. On top of that though, they also run their own programmatic ads on YouTube videos, which you probably can't distinguish from regular ads, but they collect money from people who want to put ads on their videos, put them up, and then quarterly you get a percentage of that. Well, that's how Defy Media works, the way that they do it. I'm not sure about other ones in particular. The other thing is they get sponsorship. So they go out directly to brands. They make the deals. They come to you and say, okay, say Squarespace want you to do this many ads. They're offering this amount of money. They want you to say this, this, and this. And then you go and do that and then they give you the money. That's how that works. Now, the reason I moved over to Defy from Fullscreen in the first place was because Fullscreen were taking 10% of my YouTube income and I didn't think that that was fair in terms of what they were actually providing. I asked for a guarantee in terms of, okay, look, I'm happy for you to take 10% if you can cover that in sponsorship deals. And they couldn't promise that, so I moved over. Because obviously 10% over the long term for what amounts to not that much work is quite a lot of money. Anyways, a few months back, or it might have even been towards the start of this year, I couldn't remember the specific dates, I'd have to bring up the emails. I got an email from somebody who worked there saying, we're changing things up at Defy and we're shifting to a model similar to Fullscreen where we're going to take 10% of all the YouTube earnings. And my response was, absolutely not. That's not happening. So that didn't end up happening. There was no kind of compromise there. I just said flat out, no, that's not going to cover the costs. That just doesn't work for me. I'll leave before that happens. And it's kind of okay, fair enough. So by the time Defy shut down, I was still contracted to them, but it was more on a kind of month-to-month basis. So I thought that was a bit strange. Something must be going on if they're hitting up people for 10%. The other thing is I started to hear rumblings from other YouTube networks that something might be going on there. They laid off a percentage of employees a while back. At one point, they were up to something like 400 people, and then I think they cut out something like 8% of the workforce. I don't have that number. I don't have those numbers in front of me, so don't quote me on that. Also, as I mentioned, a lot of this is just things that I've heard or experienced, so there's almost certainly some errors going on here. But also, a lot of other networks kept emailing, and as the months went on closer to now, these emails became more and more frequent. Some people even flat out saying, hey, looks like Defy is going to be closing. Do you want to jump over to this YouTube network instead? So the writing was on the wall towards the end. But I didn't think it was so bad to the extent of what actually happened, which I'll get to. Also, they sold off Screen Junkies, which is a hugely profitable, I'd imagine, I don't know the numbers specifically, entertainment brand. They obviously do honest trailers and a bunch of other great stuff. There's really good people who work there. And that to me was strange because why would you sell off something that profitable? I actually contacted someone from there at the time and said, hey, what's going on? And they said, look, I don't know the specifics of it. I'm not going to name who this person was. But, this is something you might want to be planning to make your exit, basically. Now you might think, why didn't you, when you heard all this, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you pack everything up and go, see you later, I'm out of here? Well, the reason I didn't, I was planning to, it was all set in motion, and then I got an offer for a bunch of Squarespace ads, and I thought, actually, it's going to help me out in a big way. There's some stuff that I'm building towards, there's some bigger projects that I'm working on. This money will really help that out. So I thought I'll do this, and then I'll move on. The other thing is there started to be delays in payment. In particular, I did 4 Squarespace ads that I was supposed to be getting the money for, something like last week or the week before. I got an email saying, hey, that's going to come through today, and it never did. And I didn't really think anything of that in particular because, as some of you might know, my wife and I run a podcast network, Claire Tonti, who you can actually follow on Instagram at Claire Tonti. She's got her own podcast called Just Make the Thing. You should also check that out. It's located at planetbroadcasting.com. Excuse the shameless plug. That is a network of Australian podcasts. And what she does in particular is connect sponsors to other podcasts on the network. Basically kind of a side business to YouTube and dealing with different brands. It happens very frequently that invoices don't get answered, money doesn't come through, people often leave that particular company and then you get a different person, so they kind of have to catch up of what payments are owed. We've had companies, which I'm not going to name in particular, nearly go under. But anyway, so that wasn't too much of a red flag at that point. I mean, not on its own, coupled with everything else, then yeah, sure. But then, yeah, earlier this week, it was announced that they're shutting down and they fired literally everybody. But in doing that particular shutdown, because of the manner in which it was done, none of the employees received any notice or severance packages. So it was just, they were out. It was done. It's over. So all these people who work for Smosh, any of the other ones, plus employees who aren't on the creative side of things, they were just out of the job, just like that. But on top of that, there's a whole lot of YouTube channels, I'm not sure of the specific number, but myself included, you might have seen some other people mention it on Twitter, who are affected by this, because when it comes to the YouTube ad revenue, as I said, it goes through Defy and then it goes to the creator, but it's also a month behind. So they get the money for that particular month, hold it for a month, and then you receive it the following month. So you're always a month behind. So how this worked this particular time was, in October, I was paid for the month of August, and that was the last payment I received. And because it is, I mentioned a month behind, 2 months of payments didn't come through, and then they froze all the bank accounts. So basically, the YouTube money, which was supposed to go to the people who made those videos, is now frozen with Defy. And there's nobody at that company, even if it wasn't frozen, to divvy that out. Now, I've been speaking quite a bit to Chris Duckman, who I'm sure everybody watching this knows. He does great movie reviews over at his channel. Absolutely worth checking out. We've been talking privately on Twitter about how to move forward with this. He's also with Defy. He's talked about it in a bunch of tweets, which I definitely recommend you check out. But his situation is very similar to mine. 2 months behind. He did a bunch of ads for them, which he was supposed to be paid for, which he wasn't. And you know, he's got a wife, a mortgage. He's at college studying film. This is a significant amount of money we're talking about. I'm not going to say the specific amount, but it's not a couple $100s. It's a lot of money. But it's not only that it's a lot of money, it's literally not their money. It's somebody else's money that they have taken in shutting down this company. Now for myself as well, I've got a wife, I've got a kid, I've got a mortgage. And honestly, if this happened to me, say 3 years ago, I had this amount of money taken from me, income, I don't know what I would have done. I could have definitely gone under with something like this. Luckily, I'm in a position now where that's not going to be the case unless a whole bunch of other terrible stuff happens. But at the same time, you know, it's not just me on this YouTube channel. We pay employees. Mason, who you've probably seen on a number of videos, we do a podcast together. It's called The Weekly Planet. You should check it out. He gets paid. Robert Collings, who does a whole lot of social media and editing and just keeps track of emails. He does a whole lot of work, which he's wonderful at. He's also being paid. I've got a number of editors that I work with. Ben, Matt, Mitch, an animator John who does the 16-bit scenes with Kenny who does the music, and also Eric who does animations, the comic book animations and some other stuff which you may have seen. He also did the title cards. I should mention that. Levins who runs a Facebook group. All these people are paid, so, well, of course they are, because that's how things work. You pay people for the work they do. And what's frustrating is just for this channel alone, there's 3 videos a week generally. 2 of them are edited by somebody else and I do the one for Sunday. And the way I try to operate is, for those 2 videos, hopefully the money that I pay for them gets made up in the revenue, which it usually is. But of course, when you don't get any of that revenue, obviously they don't pay for themselves. They cost you money and it's unsustainable. Here's something that's kind of interesting though. You might have heard something about this. A few years back, Defy $70 million was invested in the company. And from my understanding, from what I've heard, the idea was to grow the company using that money and then sell it off at a profit. And I do wonder, well, why are they keeping this YouTube money? Is the idea to pay those people back? I honestly don't know. I mean, it does seem like they plan on keeping the money because they've made no effort to reach out to anybody regards to any kind of payment or any kind of ideas for what's happening in the future, which they might not. It still might be returned at some point. Though that being said, there's been no indication that it would. We got no word that it was closing down until after it happened, and you saw the various media reports. But that money between all the creators and looking at the people and the different YouTube channels who are through Defy, I could easily see this money that they've taken in AdSense being in the millions. Again, I don't know that for a fact, but in total, it'd have to be a considerable amount of money considering the people that are involved with channels that are much bigger than mine. Now, of course, where do we go from here? Well, we're not exactly sure at this point. We're considering our legal options, but of course, is it worth going after a bankrupt company, spending a whole lot of money, probably more than they owe, just for them to say, well, we're bankrupt and the funds aren't there regardless? And a few people have kind of floated the idea to do it in a crowdfunded way, kind of like how H3H3 did when they were being sued. Which, look, I'm not totally against, to be honest. But if it's a complete waste of time, then I don't want to waste people's money. And I don't know, I'd feel a bit funny about taking money for this. I mean, if it got everybody else paid and it got people severance packages, then that would absolutely be less of a problem. Of course, with this though, there are some silver linings. First of all, YouTube's response has been really good, which is surprising. They're not all terrible all the time, despite what you may have heard and what things I've said prior, no doubt. The first response I got from them was ridiculous because I emailed them, said, hey, my channel is linked to Defy and it's not going to let me unlink until December. And if it wasn't going to unlink till December, then the next month's payment would have again gone through to Defy, presumably. And their response was, we can't actually help you with this. You need to take this up with Defy. And I sent a very curt email that was something along the lines of, they fired everybody. There's nobody at Defy. You need to sort this out. And to their credit, they did. They disconnected everybody. My channel's been remonetized, which is great. So any views and money going forward now will go through my AdSense directly to me. The other thing is, like I said, Screen Junkies is going to continue. And for me in particular, I think that's a positive thing because I have visited them before and there's a lot of really wonderful people that work there and I'd hate to see them as well as everybody else be out of the job. Again, it would be great if it was everybody, but at least they survived this. The other thing is, I'm not the worst hit of who this has happened to. I've always kind of said that YouTube is this sinking ship and it's very unstable. And this is an example of that being the case. And because of that, my wife and I decided diversifying a few years back into podcasts, getting our own sponsorships. Like I said, we have a network called Planet Broadcasting, which you should absolutely check out. There's a whole lot of great podcasts on there. They're wonderful people. But basically we did that so our main source of income isn't YouTube. And if something like this happened, then we wouldn't be out on our ass with, like I said, a mortgage and a kid and bills and all that kind of thing. Also, we've got Patreon as well. But the only reason I'm able to do that is because I have my wife to help me out. A lot of people haven't done something like that because if it was just me, I wouldn't have built a network separate to this. This would have been it. It would have been YouTube and maybe some sponsors that I'd kind of drum up by myself. The other thing is I've still got some decent sized sponsor videos coming up, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. I don't know. We'll see. Sometimes it's hard with sponsored videos because you don't want to make them, too kind of kiss ass. You want to make them entertaining in their own right. So it's a fine line. We'll see how that goes. So like I said, not the worst hit. I mean, Ian from Smosh, you might have seen this video. He, who left Smosh last year, I believe. In 2011, they sold Smosh to a company which became Defy for zero money. And he did this on the promise that when they become publicly listed, he would have shares in the company. They never became publicly listed and now they are gone. So essentially he sold them for $0. And as he mentioned in the video, he was young. He didn't come from a lot of money to begin with. It seemed like a great option because also after he did that, they put them on a wage. So, all that, I can understand why somebody would do that, especially because in 2011, you couldn't really see where that brand was going to go. And, like I said, things can shut down any minute. So I guess the point of all of this, if there is something, if you know someone who you like, who's involved with Defy, support their Patreon. If you see anybody mention on Twitter that they used to work for them, keep an eye out for jobs for them. Actually, if anybody wants to comment below or hit me up on Twitter, if you've worked for any of these companies or you have a YouTube channel, I'll link it below if people want to check that out. So yeah, go and watch their stuff, share it, support them in any way you can. For me, like I said, we're in a situation where because we've diversified, we're gonna be okay, hopefully. But I guess if you wanted to support anything, I would say listen to my podcast, The Weekly Planet. You can check it out. I'll link it below. That podcast, though, it comes out every Monday morning. We talk movies and comics and TV shows. We do the topics of the week or the big news. And then we get into either the big movie that came out that week or a specific topic. Answer a whole lot of questions from people who write in. The people who listen and support that are really great. Really nice group of people. We were planning on filming it soon because we're building a studio out the back of my house. So we're going to make it a video podcast. That might be pushed back a little bit because of a whole bunch of stolen money, which you may or may not know about. But yeah, I hope to still make that happen regardless. Anyway, was this video anything? Who's to say? Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, ask me on Twitter. I'm happy to answer most things, I guess. But like I said, the most important thing is if you do want to help in any way, which you may or may not, then just support the people you like or even don't like. The other thing is I just wanted to quickly mention our care campaign that we did this year, raising money for women and girls in poverty around the world. It ended up at $47,000, which is crazy, which is a crazy amount of money. So another bit of good news at the end. But the bad news is, of course, I'm going to take that money and use it personally to build a studio. That's not true, but by God, if I could, I would. But really, thank you to those who donated. It's our biggest charity campaign. We do one every year for those who don't know. It's our biggest charity campaign by quite a lot. So I'm really happy with the way that turned out. Also, come back tomorrow because there's going to be another video here. It's going to be on Harry Potter. I don't want to give anything away, but here's a clip. All right, thanks everyone. I appreciate it. Take care.